VSiN Weekend Morning Line on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Good morning, everybody, here on this Saturday. It's the VSiN Weekend Morning Line. I'm Ariel Epstein, and joining me today, Marc Malusis. What's going on, Marc? Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, we got Stanley Cup playoffs getting going, NBA playoffs. You got a quartet of games tonight. Obviously, Major League Baseball. We got plenty of picks and props, plenty of guests, but it's a pleasure working with you. We've crossed paths. I've interviewed you a number of times, Ariel. You've done you've had an amazing career, and looking forward to working with you for the next 3 hours.
3 years. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That would be a long show. No, yeah, we've met a lot of the same people, and we're going to meet some more people today. I haven't spoken to some of the guests before that we have on, but we've got an absolutely loaded show. Chuck Esposito is going to talk NFL draft props with us. Rick Kamala talking NBA playoffs, which, I mean, it officially starts today. Come on, the play-in is fake. John Buccigross, NHL playoffs. Of course, he's a legend, and he's going to tell us everything we need to know about the Stanley Cup playoffs starting tonight. Thor Nystrom going to talk more NFL draft. Matt Humans talking NFL draft and NBA playoffs in the noon Eastern time hour. And Thomas Gable going behind the counter with us so we can get the view from behind where the books are. We always have to think like an odds maker here. And going into the playoffs, Marc, I mean, this is like playoff time, NBA especially, and Stanley Cup playoffs too. You've got to handicap these games very differently.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, I think the regular season people lean into it. Like you look at, say the Knicks and Pistons, right, which get going 6:00 tonight Eastern time at Madison Square Garden, right? The Mecca and Detroit took 3 or 4 during the course of the regular season. A lot of pressure on Tom Thibodeau, concerns about his coaching future should they lose to Detroit in the opening round. They're the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks are a healthy 7.5 point favorite going into the game tonight, but there's a lot of people to look at and say, well, Detroit's going to be physical, different Knick team than the one a year ago, more defensive minded a year ago, more offensive minded this year. Can Brunson go get OG Anunoby involved? Can Brunson go out there and get Mikal Bridges involved outside of him taking and getting his own shots? And look at Detroit comes into the series. This cliche, Ariel, is, they've got nothing to lose, right? I mean, a 30-game improvement from where they were a year ago. Cade Cunningham is a rising star when you look at what he's been able to do. He torched the Knicks during the regular season. Detroit won both games at Madison Square Garden, but the playoffs are different. Long story long, the playoffs are different. A series is different. No doubt about it. There's a decided home court advantage. And you also look at it, a series, and this is why I love, whether it be the Stanley Cup playoffs, whether it be the NBA playoffs, this time of the year, I think for a sports fan is as good as it gets, is because a series can take on a personality in and of its own. Whether it be injuries, whether it be physicality, whether it be a coaching change, whether it be a coaching decision. You also have to remember when you look at a lot of these NBA playoff series, especially the really good coaches, they're not showing everything in their hand during the course of the regular season during these matchups. And especially when you're looking at a guy like Tom Thibodeau, who's got the experience that he has. So yeah, amazing time. We've got, a quartet of NBA games. We got 2 NHL Stanley Cup playoff games today. It's going to be an absolute blast for all sports fans and for those that want to get involved.
Those Knicks are laying 7 at the Garden, total 220.5. You spoke about coaches. We're going to see the Denver Nuggets in the playoffs without their head coach, Michael Malone, who got fired, of course, a few weeks ago. So close to the playoffs. You could tell by the way the line has moved in this Clippers-Nuggets series. First off, the Nuggets are at home and they're only laying 2.5. Second, this series completely flipped. It was the Clippers who were dogs going into it on the opening line. It's now flipped to the Clippers being favored around minus 115 to win the series. That's absolute craziness because the Clippers, I thought, was like a sharp side, and all of a sudden it's become very public, Moose.
Yeah, I'm one of those public. I like the Clippers in the series, and I like the Clippers in game 1. And I get why Michael Malone was fired out in Denver, and they got rid of their general manager Booth as well, and they weren't working well together, and the team couldn't stand Malone, and they had tuned him out. He had been too critical to his players, and you'd seen that, and not all that long ago, Ariel, we were watching, them celebrating NBA championship, right? And Nikola Jokic, we know how brilliant of a player he is. He's right there with SGA to be MVP of the NBA during the course of the regular season, even though I think it's going to go to the Thunder Star. Yeah, you look at this, the Clippers are one of those teams when they're whole and when they're healthy, and specifically when Kawhi Leonard is healthy, they're a different team. You've seen that during stretches of this season, and you can't tell me that all of a sudden Denver is going to figure it out because they fired their head coach. They're really talented. There's no doubt. Not as good as the team that won an NBA championship. Their depth isn't nearly as good, and that was a point of contention with Malone. But when I look at this Clipper team, not all that surprising with all the drama. Usually that doesn't equate to success in the NBA. With all the drama out there in Denver, and with the Clippers being one of those teams when whole, they're one of those dangerous teams in the Western Conference, and I think that's why they've gotten the love that they've gotten as up until game one of this series.
I am fascinated by how the Nuggets are going to potentially bounce back in this series. It's a big change, and I've heard from people close to the Nuggets, the players have kind of like shifted their focus to next year. A lot of them just were completely clocked out. It's almost like when you have a bad boss, you feel like, oh, I just want to leave this job. They fire the boss. You're still miserable at the job because it just put a bad taste in your mouth, and you just want a fresh start somewhere else. That's kind of the vibe I get from the Nuggets.
Yeah, I think that's a great reference. And everyone's had bad bosses and can relate to that story, right? And some people that, whether how they communicate, their leadership, the vision, whatever it might be. Yeah, or you look at it, as Pat Riley used to say a number of years ago when he was the head coach of the Knicks before he left for the Miami Heat. There's a shelf life for any coach. Especially when you're looking at the NBA, the message, especially when guys are there for a while, starts to wear thin. What you're demanding of them starts to wear thin. And that's why I think you saw the coaching change out there in Denver. And I think when you look at it, it's fair to say that team doesn't necessarily feel like they can accomplish the goal of winning an NBA championship, something they set down, at the start of training camp a number of months ago, because of everything that has come into everything that's taken place as this season has gone along. So I think it's fair when you look at it. They could be tired, they could be frustrated, they could be mentally and physically worn down, more mentally than anything else. They still have one of the best players in the world in Nikola Jokic, who's, if his career continues on this ascent, is going to be one of the, the greats of the greats, right? The upper echelon to ever play in the association with the kind of career that he's had up until this point in time. That's why I kind of favor the Clippers. I know they're a little bit of a strange team. I'm not a Harden guy. I've never been. Whether it be with, Houston or Brooklyn, or now obviously in Los Angeles with the Clippers. But I have been a Kawhi guy when he's been healthy. I've gotten frustrated when he's gone down to injury. But he was unbelievably special in San Antonio, great in Toronto, hit and miss out there in Los Angeles. But I think the Clippers are live, and I think that's why you're seeing the money flow their way, because of everything you talked about in Denver that's gone on. And maybe they have mentally just basically tuned it out and said, we'll see you next year, and we'll see exactly what the new regime looks like. And this is a Clipper team that we've seen when they are whole, and that's difficult to kind of pinpoint, but when they are all together, they're a dangerous team in the Western Conference.
The Clippers play great defense. What scares me the most for the Denver Nuggets, you mentioned Kawhi, you mentioned Harden. It's Norman Powell for me. I know people want the bets, they want the props. Norman Powell over threes, you got to look at every game of this series. That Denver Nuggets perimeter defense has been absolutely atrocious. They are so slow. They can't move outside fast enough. Nonetheless, for Norman Powell, you thought when Kawhi Leonard came in, you thought when James Harden comes in, oh, the Clippers, they're the team. They might be the team of LA now, right? They might be better than LeBron. No. That's not what got them over the hump. It was Norman Powell, Moose.
I love that take. That's a good one, right? So you need Batman, you need Robin, and then you need Alfred, right? So I'd compare Norman Powell. Well, that's exactly right. I think he's a good X factor. I don't think there's any doubt. And Powell's a good one to bring up when you look at it. I would give a coaching advantage to the Los Angeles Clippers in this series as well. I think they're alive. They're never going to be what the Lakers are out in Los Angeles. They're just not, right? It's like you and I are both native New Yorkers.
It's like about the Mets.
Yeah, well, right. It's like saying the Mets are going to be the Yankees or the Brooklyn Nets. Like, how about this, right? The Knicks are the city's team, right? You know, I'm a native New Yorker. You live in New York. Like, we look at the Knicks are the city's team. Everybody cares about the Knicks. It's like the idea that the Brooklyn Nets are all of a sudden going to take over New York City. You know, great arena, love the borough of Brooklyn. That's just never happening.
It didn't work.
It didn't work, right? It didn't work. There was a lot of drama, a lot of nonsense. It didn't work. The Brooklyn Nets were more interesting, you know, for everybody outside of New York City than people inside New York City. Same can be said for the Los Angeles Clippers. The Lakers are king out there in Los Angeles, and they are extremely dangerous. And they play later on tonight going into these playoffs because of Luka and the brilliance of, obviously, the ageless LeBron James.
Yeah, we've got games actually starting at 1 o'clock today in the association. The Milwaukee Bucks are at the Indiana Pacers laying 6. Then 3:30 p.m. Eastern time, you've got the Denver Nuggets -2.5 against the Clippers. Knicks are at 6 o'clock Eastern laying 7 against the Pistons. And then the Minnesota Timberwolves on the road in LA facing the Lakers. The Lakers laying 4, that total 216.5. We're really seeing a bunch of totals on the board, 225.5 and lower. For people that missed out on the unders for the play-ins, I'm sorry that you didn't know the trend. Moose, did you know about betting unders as soon as they come out for the play-ins?
No, I didn't. No.
Know it for next year. You got to wait. As soon as those totals come out for the play-ins, you just have to bet the under. The steam on the unders were insane. And if anyone got in late, I feel bad, but that was a lot of fun to ride those unders in the play-in games. Moose and I have got a lot more to get to today. We've got NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball. And coming up next, we are going behind the counter with Chuck Esposito, race and sportsbook director at Station Casinos. So make sure to stay right here on VSiN.
Tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Welcome back to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line alongside Marc Malusis. I'm Ariel Epstein. We are joined now by a great guest who's going to take us behind the counter. It is Chuck Esposito, race and sportsbook director at Station Casinos. So much going on today, Chuck. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. It's always fun for us with NBA, NHL playoffs, baseball in full swing, the pro football draft. There's no downtime for us guys, that's for sure.
No, we definitely do not sleep over on the sportsbook side. Marc?
Oh, yeah. Chuck, let's get into like the NBA playoffs. Let's start there because Ariel and I were spending a lot of time in the opening segment. You know, you got a quartet of games today. You know, when you're looking at the handle from your perspective, you know, how big of the interest is in the NBA playoffs? And is there one particular series where you're seeing more action than others?
Yeah, I think first, Marc, it's, you know, the end of the NBA season when you had a lot of meaningless games. You had a lot of guys sitting out games, which is a popular trend. It makes it hard, I think, from the guest side of it and our side of it as well. At least in the playoffs, hopefully we have a better idea of what's going on from game to game, because just one or two players out does alter things a lot, or I should say if they're questionable. The two series for me that are kind of intriguing are the Clippers-Nuggets series and the T-Wolves-Lakers series. Both getting a lot of action, you know, especially with being out west. But I think you look at the T-Wolves-Lakers, there's no question we're going to be T-Wolf fans. They definitely have the advantage in size. They're going to need Edwards to play like Superman. But this Laker team is getting a tremendous amount of backing, not just in this game, but in the series and, of course, in the future book as well, where we have some liability.
Shocker, the Lakers are getting a ton of action. No surprise there, backing LeBron James. Talk about another big player, Milwaukee Bucks star Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yet, there is a chance Dame Lillard enters this series. So how does the book handle the unknown with the Milwaukee Bucks?
That's really the hardest part, Ariel, with basketball is the unknown. Really, I say that in every sport. I mean, we want to know if a guy is in or out. When it's questionable or doubtful or game time decision, makes it really tough for us. We're just going to watch it a lot quicker and adjust just based on what we kind of hear and what the way the bettors are betting the game. So right now, you know, the game's holding with the Pacers around a 5.5-point favorite, but we'll see if that game ends up dropping a little bit, or that line ends up dropping with it being an early start time this morning.
Chuck, I want to ask you in terms of when you're looking at series, how much as a director of the sports book out at stations do you look at Red Rock? How much do you look at what you saw during the course of the regular season and realizing that the NBA playoffs are obviously different than what you see over the course of 82 games when you're looking at teams of quality?
I'm still going to look at the regular season just to see, if there's trends there, if there's certain teams that have really had a lot of success against other teams. I think you look at teams like in that Lakers series, to me, it's big because you look at the T-Wolves and how many points they give up per game, and how does that play into the Lakers and their offense and when they're all healthy. So we're always looking at that stuff. I think analytics comes into it so much more, not just for the other side of the counter, but for our side of the counter as well. We hope to put a good two-way number up and then let the guests decide. But in many cases, they're still going to favor one team or another. And as we kind of talked about earlier, that has been the case with the Lakers. The Clipper Nuggets series, though, to me is really interesting as well, guys. I think you look at these two teams, and I think the Clippers with Kawhi and Zubac are really, really good. Yet the other side getting some love from the bettors. So we'll see how that series works out. But right now, the Nuggets are a very small favorite in Game 1.
Chuck Esposito, Race and Sportsbook Director at Station Casinos, joining us out from Las Vegas, taking us behind the counter. Biggest liabilities for the NBA playoffs. Who is it over at Red Rock?
It's actually the couple of teams out west, guys. It's the Lakers and Warriors.
Wow. Not surprising at all.
Nope, it's not.
Chuck, okay, so it's Lakers and obviously Golden State when you're looking out west. What about in the East? What's your biggest liability in the East?
There really isn't a lot of liability for the teams out east, guys. It just seems like there was a lot more of a Western kind of flavor when they looked for some value, and that was with the Lakers and Warriors kind of before the trade deadline, and then afterward it was kind of enhanced somewhat, but not a liability with the teams out east.
Yeah, I mean, you can see that there's so much value out in the West as well. So people are very tempted by those 10-1 numbers, especially with an inexperienced team like OKC. Chuck, in the NHL for the Stanley Cup playoffs, who's the biggest liability for you guys?
It's a pretty easy question. It's the Vegas Golden Knights, which seems to be the case. Seems to be the case every year. Our bettors just back them. I mean, from the fan side of it, guys, we love when the Knights do well. It packs the book. It increases handle. There's a lot more props up, both on the app and over the counter. But from the business side of it, it is really hard. I mean, especially a Knights win, cover the puck line, and the game goes over. We've already seen that series price start to creep up somewhat. There was a little sharp action on the Wild to start, but it's been pretty one-sided since in favor of the Knights. So it's really kind of a catch-22 for us. On one hand, we love seeing the Knights advance, but if they're going to win a series, we would much prefer they lose maybe a game at home or two, and the series goes 7 games, because a night walkthrough against the Wild is not good for our side of the counter.
Chuck, I'm a ticked off Ranger fan after everything that transpired this year during the course of the regular season. So I don't get to enjoy after win the President's Trophy, but that's more of a talk show kind of a conversation than it is right here on VSiN, talking about all the issues with the Blue Shirts. I love the Stanley Cup playoffs. There's nothing better. When you look at all these opening round series that we're getting, where is the most handle going? Which series?
Well, first, Mark, I'll tell you too, I'm a disappointed Blackhawks fan, so I haven't had anything to cheer about for quite some time, although I'm hoping the trend is starting to turn with Frankie Nazar and, of course, Bedard and some of the other young players they have. The one series that's really kind of, for me, that's intriguing, and I think it's been that way for the bettors so far too, and that's the Oilers and Kings series. I think the Oilers with McDavid, so, kind of looking to hoist Lord Stanley's Cup and, who they would match up with next. But this King team, I think, is sneaky good. And again, this is a series out west, but Oilers-Kings has been getting a lot of play so far.
I want to switch over to the NFL draft, which is starting on Thursday. Can't believe it's already here. The books have caught on a little bit, knowing that this isn't the best event for them, is it?
It's not. I'm a draftnik. I love the draft. I think it's that, so many people ask about it though, and we're in an information era, Ariel, and there's so much out there. If it's a smoke screen or what's actually happening, that we haven't done great on it over the last.
No one has, by the way.
No, but the guests want it. They ask about it. We've done draft events, so we've tried to be creative, and we put a draft index up for 26 of the teams, what the first player taken will be, or for each team. For an example, for the Raiders, it was running back, and those odds just keep going up with all the Genty buzz. But I'm not 100% convinced that's the way they go. The Saints quarterback was the favorite. We had to take that down though once you heard that Carr was injured, and I think that just intensified that a little bit. We've got the number of trades in the first round up, what position Mr. Irrelevant will play. And then we're going to actually put some player props up this week. So although it hasn't been great for us, we still want to put stuff on the board. The guests ask for it, and we might move things a little bit quicker, have a little bit more fun with the way we adjust things. But we do have a lot of draft props up right now for our guests.
Well, Chuck, last one for me would be on the NFL draft is what's the biggest learning lesson that you have taken over the last 4 or 5 years in putting up props for the NFL draft?
It really is the player props. It's putting them up early on if a player position will say be over under 5.5 or 6.5. And actually the first overall pick several years ago when Walker went number 1 to the Jags, I think we had him at 60 or 70 to 1. Unfortunately, not a good proposition for our side of the counter. We know Ward looks like a slam dunk this year. So being a little bit more selective with the individual player props that we put up, guys, has been much more beneficial for our side of the counter. But again, we like putting these up for our guests because they're definitely asking about them, and everything is draft centric this week.
It is draft week, or I guess you could say the song from Drake, Draft Day on Thursday. Yep. Chuck Esposito, Raisin Sportsbook Director at Station Casinos, taking us behind the counter. Thank you so much for coming on with us on this Saturday.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Look forward to chatting with you soon.
Thanks, too, Chuck. And good luck this week. If you just want to get in on the action after hearing Chuck, First Bet has you covered. Sign up now to access exclusive promotions and bet on hundreds of thrilling horse races every day right from your phone or computer. Visit firstbet.com. That's the number 1, stbet.com, and use promo code VSiN200 to score a 20% rebate on all your wagers for the first 60 days. That's up to $200. Do not miss out. Start betting today at firstbet.com. Coming up, you might have watched it last night, or maybe you fell asleep, or maybe you were like me and went to a nice steak dinner. So we're going to recap what happened in the NBA play-in games last night right here on VSiN with Marc Malusis. I'm Ariel Epstein. See you in a few minutes.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
It's the VSiN Weekend Morning Line alongside Marc Malusis. I'm Ariel Epstein. Thanks for joining us on this early Saturday. You want to make some money today, so we're going to try to help you do that. I'll tell you this, Marc, it is Passover this week. It is the last day today. This is the last 24 hours I have to get through without having bread, pasta, carbs. And last night I started to feel it because I had Bam Adebayo, who I went back to for the Miami Heat, their center. I went back to him over 19.5 points for the second straight play-in game. You want to know how this man did yesterday? They won.
Sure.
So I thought if the Heat were going to win, this was a winner. Bam put up 17. I'm done. Absolutely done. Like, that was what threw me over the edge for Passover, that now I need pasta again to just make me happier.
And Ariel, the game goes into overtime as well. You even get extra basketball, and still you don't get the over.
No, that is when you can say to me, see, I tried to make an excuse. First of all, Miami Heat win the game 123-114. They were like a 1-point dog going into the game. Obviously, it goes over the total. And I'm sitting there like, okay, Bam on Wednesday in the play-in game, he didn't go over his 19.5 points because he had 15 points in the fourth quarter with about 8 minutes left. It was a blowout game on Wednesday. They don't need him to put up much more offense. Tyler Hero put up 38 points. All good. I made the excuse. It was because it was a blowout. This one was not a blowout, Marc, and here we are, still a loser. So you could call me a loser. It's fine.
No, I'm not gonna do that. But that's what happens at times when you're looking at this. So like you think that something's all of a sudden going to be so easy, or you get the extra basketball, or after Trae Young hits that one with, the layup with, under 5 seconds to go in regulation to force overtime. If you were a Hawks backer, you're thinking, well, we've got all the momentum in the world. And there was the Heat, and there was De'Vion Mitchell hitting a big three to put them up 9 late after Atlanta couldn't grab a rebound. And if you were a Hawk backer, or if you were a Bam Adebayo over better, like you were, Ariel, you're like frustrated because you're like, at least, well, the Heat score 123, they go play a game in overtime, and still you don't get that over. But so that's frustrating. But Miami marches on, and listen, the game I loved. I didn't have a great feel about that game, and I did love the Grizz in the night game against Dallas. And there is just because of just the vibe in Dallas and everything that's gone down. And I know the Grizzlies fired their head coach. We talked about it with Michael Malone earlier in the program, and Denver as they get their series going later on today against the Los Angeles Clippers. But I did love the Grizzlies last night laying the points, and they were a heavy favorite on the money line, laying 238. They were home against Dallas. They won the game by 14 going away, 120-106. If you laid the 6 last night, that was one game of the 2 NBA games, the 2 playing games that we saw last night. I was more involved. I was involved in the second one, not so much the first one.
I saw, according to BetMGM, that the Mavericks were getting 63% of the bets and 72% of money on the spread. So that one was a 6.5-point spread. It did have me thinking when I looked at that 6.5-point spread. I know that the Grizz were home. I thought Dallas was big enough and experienced enough that they didn't deserve to be getting 6.5. Thought the spread was a little bit too steep, but it clearly wasn't with a 120-106 Grizzlies win. Offense prevailed over defense, which also is a bit shocking when you always hear that term, defenses win championships.
Well, I think the general manager after trading Luka is going to basically be saying that to the refrigerator light. Defense wins championships. Defense wins championships. I mean, you trade a generational talent, and he's meeting with the media, all this stuff, and it's all about defense. Listen, I grew up watching the Knicks. I understand defense can only take you so far. You need some offense as well, right? It's good to play defense. I get it, but I lived during the days, I grew up as a Knicks fan during the days of Patrick and Oakley, and when Michael was winning championships outside of, taking a, hiatus to go play baseball with the Chicago White Sox. But it was always, and the Bulls played great defense, but they were also a highly efficient offensive team. And they had arguably the greatest player the sport's ever seen in MJ. Defense takes you only so far. You got to be able to score. And that's the issue you have with the Dallas Mavericks. And he is going to have a hard time ever living that trade down, or of trading Luka to Los Angeles Lakers. And, saw Adam Silver on with Pat McAfee defending it, say the commissioner can't turn down a trade, everything, all the conspiracy theories are out there. But I do know this, and I'm not a Laker fan, and we joked around a little bit with Chuck Esposito last segment, Ariel, but I do know this: when the Lakers are good, that's good for the NBA. Because they are a national brand. True. It's like when the Yankees are good in Major League Baseball, it's good for Major League Baseball. When the Dodgers are good, it's good for Major League Baseball. When the Lakers are good, it's good for the NBA.
It's true, and that was even pre-LeBron days. Of course, it's all about the Kobes, the Shaqs, now the LeBrons taking over LA, and the book needs them to lose. Shocker. No shocker there. But last night with that Grizzlies game, I was looking at some unders. I thought that Zach Edey was going to have a tough time, and he didn't. A second straight game against the Mavs and those bigs. It looks like Edey's coming into NBA form. He had 15 points, 11 rebounds. It's a big step up from what he was at early in the season when he couldn't really bounce back against teams the second time around. I'll tell you this, though, about Ja Morant. They continue to overly price his numbers. He's always a 26.5, 27.5 points prop. This is the second playing game that Ja Morant has now put up 22 points. It is just too high sometimes. And, of course, there are certain players I don't like to fade. I don't like to fade Luka. I don't like to fade Steph. I don't like to fade LeBron. But there are just certain times when you look at a number and you say, that number is way too high, Moose.
Yeah, and sometimes it hits, and I get that, and I understand that. And listen, we were talking a little bit off the air before we hopped on air today on VSiN, Ariel, because we've never worked together and kind of get a feel for. And you're great at props, right? I'm not fantastic at props, right? I know my strengths, I know my weaknesses. Like I like sides, I like totals. I'll dabble into a prop here or there, but sometimes I've gotten
for your sons when they grow up and they could be big, strong, and gamble. Then you've got to know how to talk props with them. That's the next generation.
Oh no, I know how to. I know how to talk about them. I'm not great at them. Do you know what I mean? You have to realize sometimes you got to realize your strength. Yeah, that's true. There's always room for improvement. My wife tells me that every single day, so I get that, right?
Well, here's the thing.
So you look at
it, right? You said you have two sons.
Three sons.
Oh, geez, your poor wife. 3 sons. So that means that you always, as a father, have to be better than them because you have to be the father and you have to be better than them at everything until you're too old to fight them, right? You have to be better than them at props, and their age group loves props. So you have to get better now, Marc.
Oh, no. I work on it. I'm just telling you, like, I'm not uber successful with it at times. Like, I'll dabble here or there and I like it, but like, I know what I'm good at. Like, I love the ponies. I love betting sides and totals. I love the Stanley Cup playoffs, NBA playoffs, regular season NBA is all good. Major League Baseball, like the sides and stuff like that. I do like K props when you're looking at starting pitchers, right? Yes. Like, I like Roki Sasaki today over 3.5 against the Texas Rangers. But that's one I do like this or later on this afternoon. I think that's a 4:00 start. That game, Rangers and Dodgers on Fox. I'm not telling you that it's not a great market to get involved in. It's an unbelievable market. I'm just realizing, I'm just letting you know some things I'm trying to improve on, some things I'm good at, some things I'm not so good at.
Here's what people don't realize in sports betting. It is okay to ask for help. And I don't mean help with your gambling problem. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about help with handicapping games. I have so many friends who are really good at college sports. I'm not good at college sports. I rely on them for my March Madness picks. I rely on them for college football picks. I have friends who are really good at betting hockey. I'm not very good at betting hockey. I just don't follow it as closely. And I think that transparency is really hard to come by in this business. So if you're transparent about what you're good at and what you're like just kind of like everybody else at, then that's okay too. Just get help from people that know it better.
Well, that's it. And I'm with an expert today. I do love live betting. Live betting is fantastic as well. I mean, I do love that, and especially when you get a heavy favorite falling behind early, like NFL live betting, NBA live betting is fantastic.
I absolutely
you see the momentum changing.
Right. And you get it's the way of the future too. All the operators I've spoken with, they've talked about how they are trying to increase the live betting opportunities out there for bettors, especially in the prop market, because you can live bet, of course, when it comes to sides, totals. Now being able to go pitch by pitch, drive by drive, that's going to change the industry.
ProfitX is offering the best odds all baseball season long. ProfitX is a peer-to-peer sports exchange available in 40-plus states, the first of its kind in the United States. You'll be able to make your sports picks against other groups of fans rather than against sportsbooks. Exchanges guarantee you the best odds on average by 10 to 20%. You can even request your own odds. Download ProfitX today and use code VSiN, VSiN, and earn up to $200 in profit cash over the first month. She's Ariel Epstein. I'm Marc Malusis. We're getting you setting the table on a Saturday morning. This is VSiN Morning, Weekend Morning Line right here on VSiN.
You're tuned in to the VSiN Weekend Morning Line.
Welcome back to the VSiN Morning Line. It is Marc Malusis and Ariel Epstein here with you until 1 p.m. Eastern Time, talking all things NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, and Major League Baseball. My baby. My favorite thing to bet is Major League Baseball strikeout props. We've got a big slate of games starting at 1:05 p.m. Eastern Time. Marc, did any game catch your eye on the Major League Baseball slate today?
Well, I think the Rangers and Dodgers, I think is probably a really sexy matchup when you look at it. The Mets and Cardinals locally, Yankees and Rays down in Tampa playing games at Steinbrenner Field, always entertaining, always interesting. I think the Ben Rice, when you're talking about individual props, I think the fact of him hitting in front of Aaron Judge, if you've been on point with that, you've been able to take advantage of that because he's getting a lot of fastballs and, he digs the fastball. He doesn't dig the off-speed pitches and has been able to take advantage of that. So, but I think on the course, I think anything involving the Dodgers, I think you got a pretty good pitching matchup when you're looking at Roki Sasaki and Nady Eovaldi later on this afternoon between those two teams, and kind of split on the money line when you're looking at it. The Dodgers obviously being the national brand they are. Great spot to play a baseball game down at Globe Life Park. I think that's probably, to me, the sexiest matchup when you're looking at the full MLB slate today, Ariel.
You're kind of waiting for Roki Sasaki to come into full form, so it's a little tough sometimes to handicap someone you don't have so much information on. We do have information on Nathan Eovaldi, though. I was looking at his 5.5 strikeout prop. The under was juiced at -130 for a reason. The Dodgers are only averaging just under 4 strikeouts a game this year against righty starters. This season, there have been 2 of the 4 starts that Eovaldi's had against a low K rate team. That was the Cubs. He had 4. Seattle, he had 3. Last year, the numbers were kind of spot on, though, with this. He averaged Eovaldi about 5 strikeouts a game against low K rate lineups. I'm probably staying away because the Dodgers are a very sharp market. They're a team that the books caught on to quickly because they are 7-6 over under their K prop right-handed starters against the Dodgers. So when you're about 500 on your props, Marc, that's when you know the book has caught on.
Ariel, I want to ask you, and that's a good call. I want to ask you about, from your perspective, when you look at baseball and individual props, when you're looking at players, say specifically when you're looking at a player like Soto, who has struggled so far for the Mets, and you look at his individual props, or you look at a guy like Kyle Tucker, who's hitting 318 for the Chicago Cubs, and you look at their individual props. When is there a good time to take advantage of either to lean into a guy that's struggling when you're looking at a Soto, or to fade a guy like, say, for instance, a Kyle Tucker, who has been unbelievably hot to start the year for the Chicago Cubs? Or do you stay away?
There are certain players that I definitely will not fade ever, like Aaron Judge. I don't care how bad his numbers were against the Royals starter last season. Like, the last series against the Royals, Judge was in the, I think his batting average was under 200 against 2 of the 3 pitchers. Yet he still hit a home run off one of them. So you can't fade certain players. There are certain spots that I will. For example, I'll fade someone if they have a bad matchup against a starting pitcher and they're not so a hot and cold kind of hitter. I'll bet overs on total bases. It's really the only offensive player prop that I'll look at is the total bases market. I know that hits, runs, and RBIs combined has become a big market as well in baseball. I'll do that not only when the starting pitcher is a really good matchup, whether it's lefty-righty splits that you could take advantage of. Sometimes batters have drastic lefty-righty splits, so if they're facing a lefty and hit lefties much better than righties, the book might not adjust. Also, a bullpen. You got to look at those MLB bullpen usages. If you see that a bullpen is washed like the Yankees, there's been too much use of some of these pitchers. You got to know eventually some kind of breakdown is coming when a bullpen is not rested enough.
Yeah, and that's interesting. And you mentioned the Yankees, and they're in action against the Rays today down at Steinbrenner Field. And you've got Cookie Carrasco on the mound, who's been, hit and miss. I know he's 2-1 on the season. You
want to talk about someone I fade? It's Cookie Carrasco.
Well, what do you like today in the Yankees and Rays game, Ariel?
Under his K prop. Under. It is plus money. You could get plus 110 for under 3.5 Ks for Cookie Carrasco. Now, the only fear is that the Yankees probably want to keep him in as long as possible because their bullpen's been used. However, the Rays, they're one of those teams that the book hasn't caught on to yet. Last year, the Rays were averaging about 5.5 strikeouts a game against righty starters. This year, they're averaging just over 3 strikeouts a game against righty starters. That is why 10 of the 15 righties to face the Rays have gone under their strikeout prop this year. Carlos Carrasco at plus 110 on the road. I would take a chance at the under here. He's gone under it in 2 of 3 against low K rate teams this season. Last year, he never went over 3.5 Ks in a road game against a low K rate team. So I would take a look here at Carrasco's under 3.5 Ks. Mark, I don't trust him ever, but I certainly do not trust him on the road.
The Braves have been one of those teams, Ariel, when you look at 6-13 to begin the year, they were a team whose, I think, win total was in the low to mid 90s to begin the season, right? So they've staggered at the gate. Chris Sale, reigning Cy Young Award winner, he's off to an 0-2 start. They're home today against the tonight against the Minnesota Twins. Sale on the mound, taking Woods, your starter for Minnesota. Who do you like today, Atlanta and Minnesota?
I love Chris Sale tonight. I usually don't love backing public pitchers like this. And obviously I'm not betting the Braves on the money line. It went from -198 to -215 overnight. We did see an uptick in the total a little bit, 7.5 to an 8. But I like Chris Sale over his strikeout prop. It's at 7.5 plus 118. It was 6.5. It was just a little juiced, -160. So I don't lay anything more than -150. 7.5 at plus money though. Last season, Sale averaged just over 8 strikeouts a game when facing these strikeout-prone lineups. And the Minnesota Twins so far, it's small sample size. This season, 2 lefties to face them. Cole Reagans had 11 Ks and Martin Perez had 9. So 2-0 over their K props. And last year, these Twins struck out about 5 times a game against lefty starters, which is on the higher end. Chris Sale at home, I'll take a shot at it. He hasn't gone over 7.5 yet this year, but the teams that he faced, the Dodgers don't strike out a lot. The Padres don't strike out a lot. The Phillies haven't been striking out a lot, and the Rays haven't been striking out a lot. He's finally getting a team striking out a lot. So I'll take a shot, 7.5 over plus 118 for me, Mark.
Any other matchups when you're looking at it, Ariel? I mean, you're great with the strikeouts when you're looking at player props. Any other individual starting pitcher matchups you like today?
You have to ride this trend. I've been talking about it on my podcast, on the Prop Queen Pod.
Let's hear it.
I've been talking about it on my newsletter at thepropqueen.com. I have been talking about this trend the entire last 2 weeks, because you wouldn't know that the trend existed week 1, but like week 2 on, it's been great. You've got to take unders against the Athletics strikeout. So today it's Milwaukee's righty Chad Patrick on the mound. His 4.5 juiced to the under. I got it -144 today. Probably overly juiced now because the book is slowly starting to unfortunately catch on to my favorite trend. The Athletics this year, 15 of the 18 righties to face them have gone under their strikeout prop. That's because last year, the Athletics were one of the most strikeout-prone teams in baseball, aside for like the Seattle Mariners, who struck out at a historic rate. But this year, they're one of the lower. They're just making more contact. They're not striking out as much. Probably does have to do a bit with the stadium, but also this team is a year older. They've got a little more experience. I like the A's more this year than the miserable selves they were last year, but they really just are not striking out. And the book is giving you these like 4.5 numbers on these terrible pitchers. Like, does anyone know Chad Patrick? Probably not. I took his under because he's only gone over this once this year. It was against the Royals. He had 5. Otherwise, he's had 1, 4, and 3 strikeouts, and all those teams are striking out more than the Athletics. And yesterday, my friend Mid-Major Matt and I were actually really upset because it was the first time that we really had a pitcher that was really good against the A's, like Freddie Peralta at home. And my friend Matt and I said, this is our favorite trend versus a really good pitcher. What do? We stayed away. What happened? The under still hit. It was 6.5. It was way too high. I said it. I knew it was too high. It always works when you don't bet it, Mark.
That's it. We'll talk a little bit about an NBA. We'll get into a little NBA futures a little bit later on as well, talking about that.
Yeah, because I made a very big mistake in not betting something I said to bet. And if I bet it, I would have been really happy 2 months later, aka now. The NBA playoffs are here, though. So it's the VSiN Killer Sports NBA Playoff Challenge now. We've invited 15 sharp minds from the world of VSiN and Killer Sports to go head-to-head, making 38 picks each from the start of the playoffs all the way through the NBA Finals. That's a total of 570 NBA playoff picks, all available to VSiN Pro subscribers. Picks are locked in 1 hour before the first game each day, so you'll have fresh insights to guide your bets every step of the postseason. Right now, you can get full VSiN Pro access through August 1st for just $59. So don't miss this playoff edge. Head to VSiN.com/subscribe to sign up today. We'll be right back here on VSiN.